Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Abitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security-oriented policies to guide the state of Israel. It's a great pleasure to be joined today by the founder and chairman of IDSF, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for taking from your busy schedule. What can you share with us about the war today?
Well, at the moment, really, everybody is looking at what is happening with the hostage deal. We don't know, really. We don't know what will happen. Hamas is not accepting any of the terms that we discussed. And it's two ways to go. Either they really don't want a deal and they believe that eventually we won't conquer Rafah and they'll manage to survive. Or maybe in a few days we'll see them just before Ramadan making a deal, and then we'll have a ceasefire of at least a month and a half, which I hope won't endanger the whole war. We'll have to see what happens. At the moment, the IDF is continuing to operate in the north of Gaza and in Rafah and in the central camps. Sorry, not in Rafah, in Khan Yunis. 2 days ago, the IDF launched a big attack on a town in Rafah called Hamed, after Hamed, who until 2013 ruled Qatar, Hamed bin Khalifa El-Thani. He visited Gaza in 2012 and donated a whole big neighborhood, which is called the city or the citadel of Hamed. The IDF launched an attack on this place, really killing dozens of terrorists and apprehending many weapons and capabilities. And in the north are continuing to operate also to clean up the area. So things are moving forward. The IDF overall approved all the plans for operation in Rafah, and now it's a matter of time. We need to see when the government will approve to the IDF to really operate in Rafah. It's crucial for winning the war. I've been asked, there were talks about the day after and us talking to different clans in Gaza to try to build a local leadership, and some of the clans saying they're not going to work with the IDF and so on. I must say that as long as the Arabs believe that there will be a Hamas around, they're not going to really talk to Israel. And therefore, we'll have to see only the day after Hamas what we can do with the clans and how we can build a local leadership. And second, so this is at the moment what's going on in the south. In the north, we're all the time targeting terrorists of Hezbollah and also militias from Syria that are assisting Hezbollah. Iranians have moved some militias from Syria into Lebanon, especially South Lebanon. And the IDF attacked and pinpointed an attack on the leadership of one of the militias operating in Syria and now in Lebanon itself. On the political level, we see Benny Gantz flying to the US, not in coordination with the Prime Minister. This is a very, very big problem for Israel because it shows that there is no real unity, that there is politics. It makes the Prime Minister weaker when it talks to different leaders in the world. So We are not very happy about this event. I think it's very important to keep the cabinet united, strong, and focused on war and not dealing with politics and trying to push for elections. Elections in the middle of a war will be devastating and will probably cost us the war. And therefore, we are fighting very hard to really send a clear message. Don't do politics as war is waged. Focus on the war and on winning. We have soldiers on the ground fighting. And the vast majority of the society really wants to focus on winning the war and not doing politics. One of the issues that are being dealt, talking about a danger of election, is that the issue of the Haredim and whether they're going to join the army or not. It's not something that is going to be solved in this time. It will take time to solve the Haredi issue, but they have to figure out some solution in the midterm to get more Haredim to join the army and be part of really the force of Israel for defending Israel. So these are discussions that are being conducted now in the government. Moshe, please, questions.
Definitely. General, thank you for that update. And I'll just give a quick plug because you mentioned the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox issue of joining the army. So on Wednesday, all of our viewers are encouraged to tune in. We're going to be joined by Brigadier General Ari Singer, who has an expertise in the manpower and the Miluim issues. So that's going to be a major topic of discussion. So if you're interested in understanding in greater detail the issue of the ultra-Orthodox draft and their involvement or lack thereof in the army, make sure to tune back on Wednesday. Obviously, General Aviv knows plenty about it also, but we're going to use that time to focus. Okay, General, an important question. Many have speculated that a long, drawn-out war is in the best interests of Iran and Hamas, whereas the longer the war takes, the more difficult it is for Israel. So first of all, do you agree with that assessment? And what do you see in terms of the pacing of this war in Gaza, for example?
Well, Israel never liked long wars. It's hard for the economy. And also it's a burden for the soldiers and the reservists. But this is going to be a long war. It's nothing similar to any war we had before, maybe just the independence war. And even the independence war was different. This war is going to be long. It's going to be long because we have to deal also with Lebanon. And it's going to be long because even in Gaza, we'll have to operate for a very, very long time to really destroy all the capabilities. But in Gaza, if we really focus and do the ground incursion in Rafah, we can finish the main missions in maybe 2 months, maybe 3 at top, and really win the war in Gaza, and then stay and operate for the long term. The big question is Lebanon and Iran. And the right thing for Israel is to really deal with the whole challenge and now and not wait. Now everybody is into it. Everybody understands that we're in war, in a mode of war. And this gives us the chance to really fight and win a decisive win on all fronts. But we really, really need to keep united, and the government needs to keep unity in order to focus and achieve all the goals that we need to achieve, and especially bringing back the citizens home in the south and in the north.
We had Major General Gershon HaKohen on the program, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he wanted to suggest that the timing of an escalation of a war in the north would be connected with families and kids going back to school come September. And then he was based on the need for the families to return to their homes on the border by September. He was working backwards to set an approximate time of when there would be an uptick in the war. Do you have any thoughts on that type of timing?
Well, I think this time, in looking also at how long it will take us to achieve the main missions in Gaza makes sense, because it means that in July, most of the IDF forces will be in the north, and we'll finish most of the missions in Gaza, and then we'll have to take the decision. And if we want to really destroy Hezbollah in South Lebanon, the summer might be a good time to do it and really achieve the missions in the north in a way that enables people to go back in September to their homes and to schools. And it's something that definitely can be achieved.
Now, again, speaking to the timing, and of course, we're not prophets. What effect does the U.S. elections have on Israel's need to speed things up or slow things down in this war?
Well, it's obvious that the administration would like to go to sleep at night and wake up in the morning with no Middle East, no problems, no Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and no wars. But this is not the reality on the ground. I think that looking at really what is the core issue, or might be the core issue in the elections in the US, it's not going to be Israel, obviously, but more really inflation, the prices. I think that many families in the States, their situation overall has worsened, and it's very different from what's going on in the stock market. The stock market is doing great, but most of the Americans are not part of this. They're not feeling it. And one of the things that might create even a bigger problem, talking about inflation, is the prices of oil. And obviously, if the Middle East goes to war, the prices will be very, very high. And this is something that I think the administration wants to avoid. So the real question is, how do you avoid it? So the administration is trying to avoid this by diplomacy and appeasement towards Iran, towards Hezbollah. We have the administration's representative, the Ochten, who came back and is talking in Lebanon and trying to convince Hezbollah to withdraw. The question is whether this kind of approach will work. And we know that Iran doesn't really respond to diplomacy. They do understand power, and they do understand threats. And at the moment, I don't think that the US is really posing the credible military threat needed to deter Iran and Hezbollah and maybe get them to withdraw from South Lebanon. So maybe by trying to keep things quiet, eventually this will bring war, because Israel cannot live in a reality where its citizens cannot go back home. We'll have to go and fight, even if it affects the US elections. And this is something that the administration needs to take in account. And this is something that everybody in Israel understands. So the best way to prevent war is being strong, is building a coalition, not creating a dependency between a coalition with Israel, US, and Saudi Arabia, and the Palestinian state, which is completely irrelevant, and just is something that hurts really the effort to build a coalition and really try to stabilize the situation.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our viewers who are sending in questions in the chat and emailing to me. I have to say we have a very educated viewership, so it's great to see these questions. General, are you able to, again, on the issue of timing, can you speak a little bit about Ramadan, how that affects this war, how that affects in general security in Israel? What does Ramadan do for us?
So Ramadan, you know, like Passover or any holiday, is supposed to be a nice holiday where people enjoy time and pray and really connect with God. And unfortunately, in the Palestinian society, Ramadan is time of riots and violence. And Usually they use the prayers in Temple Mount in Al-Aqsa as an excuse to accuse Israel the Jews are taking on. And when Hamas launched his attack, they really hoped that the Israeli Arab Society and the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, the Arab Palestinians, will also join the fight. And this didn't happen, to get Israeli Arab Society and the Arabs start fighting Israel, and they hope this will help them force our forces keep attacking terrorists, and also limit the amount of people who can go on Temple Mount, the age and amount, in a way that is controllable, that we can really control what's going on the mount and not lose control. So the real experts on this are the police that is managing this every year. This year, unlike the last few years, there is no threat of Hamas shooting rockets on Jerusalem. At least this is something we took care of. They took care of, and Hamas is not posing any more real threat to Israel. So this is something that works well for us. But still, we are very worried, and we want to make sure that things are under control. Ramadan is not going to stop Israel from operating in Gaza. In Gaza, we are going to operate and do whatever we need to do, even if there is Ramadan.
There was a very significant operation in Ramallah reported in the news. Are you able to comment on, throughout this war, what Judean Samaria has looked like, and maybe why we're hearing about an operation in Ramallah now?
Well, we're operating everywhere, all the time. Central Command is launching continuously operations all the time, and this will continue, whether it's in Ramallah, Nablus, Jenin, Jericho, everywhere.
Okay, let's go back up to the northern border. There is no war yet, but there's these back and forth between Israel and Hezbollah. Is Israel making a significant dent in Hezbollah with all of this back and forth, or is it just maintaining status quo?
No, Israel is really preparing the ground for a possible Israeli ground incursion. One of the things I dealt with when I was the chief auditor of the Israeli Defense Establishment is auditing the challenge of the Air Force in operating in Lebanon against the air defense that Hezbollah built. They built very strong air defense that challenged our Air Force for a very long time. And in the last few months, we basically destroyed almost all their air defense capabilities. And now the Air Force is operating freely everywhere in Lebanon. This is dramatic. This is dramatic in the ability of Israel to really attack with a very massive support of the Air Force. And so also at the same time, we're destroying many, many capabilities of Hezbollah in South Lebanon in a way that when we'll have to go in, if we have to go in, this will be much easier for us. So we're preparing the ground very systematically to make sure that when we do a ground incursion, we'll have the best conditions needed to succeed and do it fast.
And what about the precision-guided missiles that Hezbollah has? If there was a war with Hezbollah, would major cities in Israel be under serious threat?
Yeah, obviously, you know, huge amount of rockets and missiles and unmanned aircrafts, and for us it will be a challenge. Definitely, there will be a very big challenge, and the way to deal with this is mainly a very, very strong attack on Beirut, on Lebanon, in a way that will make it very, very wise for Hezbollah to shorten the war as much as possible, because I think it's very likely that if we hit hard Lebanon, at a certain point, the Lebanese people will rise against Hezbollah. They will view them as enemies and rise against them. And this is something we need to encourage.
And just to clarify, what's the size of the Lebanese army versus Hezbollah? Would there be a credible civil war that would begin and really have Hezbollah fighting on two fronts?
So the army is not very big, but you don't have only the army. You have many militias. You have Christian militias. You have Druze militias. So you have different groups that are operating and can join together to fight Hezbollah.
Okay, thank you. And thank you to all of our viewers for sending in all of these questions. General, if we can go back to the home front for the last few minutes that we have, you mentioned the need to continue the unity here in Israel. What is your assessment of that unity? Do you think that in general, Israel, the people are willing to continue in this war? Are you seeing a major erosion and we're headed for a rough patch, returning potentially to what it was like pre-October 7th?
Well, I think that the Israeli society realized that there are things that are much bigger than all the different discussions that we have. And we have to be united because we have very strong enemies we have to deal with. And suddenly other things seem much less important than they were. And there are many, many forces now operating in the Israeli society, calling for unity, calling for handling problems by discussions and talking about that, and not by really fighting each other and demonstrations and so on. But there is still a small but noisy group in the Israeli society who are kind of anarchists, who all the time look for chaos. And we have to be very strong and determined in fighting this kind of tendencies. And I can say that certainly the soldiers that are fighting in Gaza and in the north, all united, all together, they are going to see and demand that the Israeli state, yes, and
I think I lost you there for a second. You know, people are writing in the chat.
I'm with you, Moshe.
People are writing in the chat names of Israeli politicians, Israeli leaders who they think are breaking the unity, and they want us, or they want to call out these people. And I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. On the one hand, identifying, you know, bad actors versus, on the other hand, not calling out people and not kind of giving them attention and potentially breaking the unity. How do you balance that?
Yeah, no, I think that we should call out people who are breaking unity, and say this is something we are not willing to accept. We want a united society. We want to be focused on really winning the war, and this is a huge war. It's a long war. And if somebody is promoting, chaos and politics and so on, it should be called. And we should say that and say, we're not going to have this. We don't want the same kind of politics we saw before.
Well, there you have it, everyone. So for those of you who are writing in names in the chat or emailing them, I think the general just gave you an permission, so to speak. He doesn't know who you're writing in, but to as necessary to try to stand for unity. General, any final thoughts before we close our session for today?
Yeah, so I think, all these people, they have media and they have mails, and they have to hear the people saying to them, this is not going to continue. We are not going to have this again. We really want a different kind of society.
Okay, Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and all of our supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you again tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time for another briefing. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.